Welcome on in. My name is Zinbad, and I want to give you my thoughts on Enshrouded as a single-player experience. There is up to 16-player multiplayer, but I won't be covering that in this video. Also, thank you to Keen Games and the lovely folks at terminals.io for the key, making this video possible. So, first off, character customization. Decent, but I'd personally like to see more options, especially considering this is a third-person game. I'm looking at my character a lot, so I want to look good. Not a big complaint here though, the options available aren't bad. An intro cutscene sets up the backstory, explaining the Shroud and the state of the world. The Shroud is the fog covering large parts of the map, which you can only survive in for a limited time. Timer runs out, you're done for. You can extend your time in the Shroud with consumables, skills within the skill tree, and certain items found within the Shroud itself. I think the mechanic is pretty interesting. It adds additional pressure to adventuring in certain areas beyond just the enemies you'll run into. On to combat. I had a tough time at first with combat because I wasn't using a major feature of the game: buffs. Through different foods and drinks, you can have 3 buffs active at a time, or if you choose to upgrade that via the skill tree. Let me tell you, they make all the difference. Cook some meat, bring some water, and bring berries or bandages with you. The difference is night and day. As for combat styles, you've got your typical melee, archer, and mage trio. I went mage because, well, I do in most games, and I was honestly not loving it at first. For mages early on, you're solely relying on your wand, which, to be fair, is the best weapon type in the game, it feels like. To me so far, anyway. However, I was thinking mage, so I'd get to cast fancy spells and whatnot. Well, you need a staff for that, and you consume spells like ammo. 1 fireball costs 1 cast. You run out, sucks for you. Later on, you can learn to craft them, and also you can find spells with infinite casts, but in the beginning I was thinking I'd want to respec to melee until I learned all that. Combat itself is fun. Just make sure you plan your approach on an area so you don't get caught off guard and swarmed. You can pick enemies off one by one, and even if you die and need to come back, it seems it takes a few days in-game for enemies to respawn, which is nice that you can slowly work your way through an area if you're struggling. As for bosses, I've only found 1 so far in the world, which was in an ether well. An ether well is an underground cavern housing shroud roots, which you can destroy to earn skill points. The boss I encountered, I actually cheesed, which I found hilarious, so I can't really tell you how tough it will be in a fair fight. I would have thought I'd find more bosses within 9 hours of playing, but maybe I just didn't go to the right areas. I will say, referencing skill points, one minor gripe I had was the speed that you level. It felt very slow that I was still at level 2 nearly 3 hours in. But with gaining skill points through other means like destroying the shroud roots, I suppose it's not the end of the world. I just prefer games that let me level a bit faster to start working on a build. Personal preference. On to questing and exploration. One of the highlights of my time in the game was exploring the world and seeing what's out there. The game does a pretty good job of giving you quests to find fellow survivors for your base. They'll help you craft new things later on. Through going out in search of these people, you'll stumble across plenty of interesting things out there, especially if you're reading the lore found throughout the world. Another big highlight for me was the ancient spires. Devoid of enemies, but full of puzzles and loot. I absolutely loved working my way to the tops of these towers. They also make for a fun point to glide from once you have the glider crafted. As a side note, the map is massive. As of the launch of the game, the map is blocked off, so maybe a third of it is playable? Not sure exactly, but the current playable area is still huge, and the rest of the map will be added later as the game progresses through early access into full release. Now, a little warning for crafting. There is no crafting directly from your base's chest storage at first. It was a huge turnoff for me when I found out. You can later in the game through upgraded storage, but for the first several hours at least, you've got to dig through each chest individually and pull out whatever you need to make that new item you want. Very frustrating and honestly my least favorite design choice by the devs. That is my only major problem with the game though, and it is solved later on. It's just a must-have feature for me in games like this, so the intentional inconvenience kinda struck a nerve with me. Now, let's talk building. As the game is voxel-based, the building options are so good. I'd say building shines is one of the big selling points for the game. There are tons of options for building shapes with the construction hammer, or you can build block by block if you want to get even more creative. The cool thing with that is connected textures. So if you make a wall out of little tiny blocks and they're all the same shape, the textures will connect and it doesn't look like a mosaic basically. It'll actually look like a proper wall. It's awesome. You can terraform the land to your heart's content, which could mean an underground base if you really wanted. Totally up to you. Also, as you upgrade your flame altar at your base, the construction area available to you will increase. So my final verdict on Enshrouded is that if you like survival sandboxes, odds are you'll like this one. It was slow to start for me, but once I learned the game's systems and found out my inconveniences would be solved later, it really grew on me. There's a lot to do and see, and while I do think the game could be even better with a small group of friends, solo play is totally viable, and you can get plenty of hours of fun out of the game by yourself. With that being said, if the video helped you out, please leave a like and subscribe if you'd like to see more games. See you next time. Bye-bye!